Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Rameumptom, Ruminations. My name is Scott, and I'm the host. Today's episode is called A Post-Mormon Moral Compass. Thanks for coming back to listen to another episode of the podcast. I really do appreciate all of the listeners and the comments that I get on the episodes that I put out. I love reading them, love interacting with you. So keep it up. And I do want to do a couple of responses from the last episode. And these primarily come from the YouTube page. That's where I get the most engagement. And occasionally they'll come from the blog, the website, Rameumptomruminations.org. I made a dumb joke last episode about future Scott resolving some of the issues that present Scott just doesn't have the time to deal with. And I couldn't remember where I took it from. And I had a couple of listeners mention where they've heard it from. Great name, by the way. Goaty McGoatface said that it's probably from How I Met Your Mother. And that probably is where I got it, because when that was coming out, that was, my wife and my show for a long time. We'd watch that one all the time. Absolutely loved it. Maybe controversial take. I didn't mind the ending. I actually liked it, but I'm crazy. Todd Ducate, they said that it was probably from Simpsons. Homer says that's a problem for future Homer. Glad I'm not that guy. That may be where How I Met Your Mother got it, but I must admit, I've never really been a huge Simpsons fan. I never watched it regularly. I have seen a number of episodes, but it was one of those shows that when I was a kid, my parents just did not want me to watch. And so I'd sneak it and watch it occasionally, but it wasn't really for me. John Re7DD said that they love the line, "I used to believe that." They said, "That's what I'm going to say from now on. They can choose how to respond to it or not. Most will probably not respond, but this is a good boundary technique. I get triggered by others' comments so easily. This either sets a boundary or starts a conversation, either of which is fine with me." I love that. That was kind of my intention with talking about that response to the situation is I have found in my life that most people don't really want to engage, at least not in a way where they'll hear what you're saying. The subject that I want to talk about today is about morality. And it's going to be kind of a general conversation. I'm not going to go into too much detail on morality as a whole, but I want to discuss this idea of received morality and adopted morality. And I'll talk about that more as we go. When we leave organized religion, an institution that we've grown up in or maybe converted to, and we adopt the version of morality that's given to us by this institution, it's very easy to follow. We have a clear set of right and wrongs. We have social norms that we're supposed to follow. We have commandments. It's black and white. Right and wrong are very, very clear. One of the struggles that both believers and some non-believers have when they exit a religious institution is reframing their morality, understanding what is right and wrong. And I want to discuss that subject today, leaving a religious institution and figuring out what your own moral compass is. One of the greatest things for me about my faith crisis and faith transition was reclaiming my own authority over my morality, over the moral compass of what I believe is right and wrong. I have to admit that there were times, even as a believing member of the church, that my moral compass differed from that of the institution, but I believed in it, and I had to, at the time, grapple with the idea that my own morality was different than that was given to me. So there's a lot going on in this subject. So let's just jump into this. I want to distinguish between what I'll call two different types of morality. I can't remember where I took this idea from. So again, if there's a listener out there that remembers where this is from, please let me know. I want to talk about received morality and adopted morality. When we receive morality, is morality that we take on from an external source. And adopted morality is morality that we choose for ourselves through reflection. At least that's the way I'm going to define those terms through this discussion. When we are born in the LDS Church or converted over to it, we receive a moral compass. We are handed a list of, here is everything that is right and wrong. Here are the things that will get you to heaven, and here are the things that will lead you down the path to outer darkness, or the other kingdoms of glory, but not the celestial. We're given this list of do's and don'ts, of rights and wrongs. And this is oftentimes presented to us as these things are moral absolutes. Do them and you will go to heaven. Fail to do them and you'll go to hell. Now there's a lot of problems with that. And I've discussed them in some other places, but the biggest one that I'll just mention here before we keep going is that the morality of religion has changed along with culture over the years. And so it's when we live our lives in our, a finite moment, we take for granted that this is truth. As a believer, we take for granted that this is truth because it's been presented to us in our lives without recognizing that this truth that we're living by has changed dramatically over the course of history. Within the history of the LDS faith, within the history of greater Christianity as a whole, the ideas of right and wrong have shifted over time. I'm just going to throw that out there. The morality of religion changes, just like culture changes. Okay. So put that out there, but we're going to, for today's discussion, we'll think of it more as a finite thing, just out of simplicity, if you will. Some of the early conversations with my wife after I left the LDS Church, she didn't know, and she was worried about what I thought of right and wrong. Sometimes people within religious institutions struggle to grasp the idea that a person can be moral without the morality of religion. Someone can have a set of morals, a set of standards, without strictly adhering to a church or a faith. The greatest gift for me of my faith crisis was the opportunity to examine each of my beliefs and decide what I wanted to keep, what I wanted to change, what I wanted to just throw away forever. There was a time in my life where I thought that the type of underwear that I wore held some sort of moral value. And that idea is laughable to me today. Even if I were still a believer of the church, I still think that that's not a moral stance. I think, this is me going on a tangent, if someone's going to be a believer and believe in the garment, I think it's more of an outward expression of their faith rather than a morality of right and wrong, which underwear you wear. It's silly to assume that you would not go to heaven because you put on the wrong underwear. Anyway, that's a distinction. Anyway, I'm on a tangent here. As I deconstructed my faith in Jesus and my faith in religion as a whole, and God and all of that, I was given the opportunity to reflect on the teachings, the core elements of what made me a Christian, and I could decide which aspects I wanted to take with me on my journey of this life and which ones I wanted to leave behind. As believers, we have these clear boundaries. The word of wisdom, the law of chastity, Sabbath day observance. We have strict guidelines that when we leave them all behind, it can feel like a free fall of what is right and wrong. Can I just go out and do anything that I want? Am I free to to cheat on my spouse? Am I free to lie to people? Am I free to go and do any manner of things that used to be against our moral compass, but now suddenly we don't have that compass from the church? What do we do now? And this gets at the heart of what I think is a disservice that many of us get when we're in institutions like this, is we're never really taught to take our own autonomy over our morality. It's given to us, and we're clearly told what to do and what not to do, rather than taught how to make choices and determine what we feel is right or wrong. Now, so I'll go back to some of the things that I said there. We leave the LDS church and we no longer have that morality of what's right and wrong according to the faith. And suddenly I wouldn't go to hell if I were to, for example, be unfaithful. So I was given this opportunity of analyzing why I behave the way that I do and reframing the motive for those behaviors. So as a believer, the motivation is selfish. And that was a very broad statement, and so that won't be true for everybody. But it's so easy for the motive of morality to be selfish because we want to go to heaven. We will avoid this behavior because if we don't, we won't get to heaven. But since I don't believe in heaven and hell anymore, why am I still faithful to my spouse? And this is, a silly, easy one for me, but I'm faithful to her because I love her, rather than the fact that I would go to hell if I weren't faithful to her. And so the motivation for my morality on this is not self-centered, but it's out of love for my spouse. If I love her truly, how should I act? And taking this concept of looking at what our motivation is for a thing and determining what we should do about it. You could go through every single aspect of the LDS faith. And we'll do another easy one. Why am I not supposed to lie to people? I could get away with a lot of different things if I just came up and told all the lies in the world. There is nothing about lying that will send me to hell because I don't believe in hell anymore. So why do I tell the truth? It's very similar. I had read this book a while ago, but there's a book called Radical Candor. I believe that being truthful to other people as best as we can leads to honest and open communication. And that has nothing to do with going to heaven or hell. That's just how I want to interact with other people. So I had this inner compass, even after leaving the LDS faith. And it seemed to still be working. I just had to think about why it still worked. What about it was working? What, if anything, had changed? The concept that I'm getting at is what many people have called moral autonomy. It's the idea that each person has the autonomy and duty, really, to govern themselves. It puts moral weight on an individual's ability to govern themselves, to decide what they think is right and wrong. To highlight this, I want to quote John Stuart Mill. He was a philosopher and political economist in the 19th century. He, born in 1806, passed away in 1873. He was English. He lived in England. He wrote a piece called, the one that I'm going to cite today is called On Liberty. This is from chapter 3. Title of the chapter is On Individuality as One of the Elements of Well-Being. So this is talking exactly about what we're talking right now. One of the things that he's kind of discussing in this paper particularly is the well-meaning parents or institutions suppressing individuality in the name of uniformity. He talks about people turning into automata. Part of the thesis, as I understand it, is he's warning people about the need. He's warning that that the world doesn't need people to imitate. It needs people who can observe, choose, and stand firm. Now, the quote that I want to cite talking about this, he says, "It is the privilege and proper condition of a human being arrived at the maturity of his faculties to use and interpret experience in his own way. It is for him to find out what part of recorded experience is properly applicable to his own circumstances and character." The thesis, as I understand, of what he's talking about in this chapter of his work is it's a call to action for everyone to be their own independent actors, critically thinking and analyzing their own life and their decisions to become, as I said just a moment ago, to become people who can observe and choose and determine for themselves what right and wrong is, rather than relying on inherited patterns from our parents or the institutions that we come from. The whole idea of religious deconstruction aligns so well with this. We see the patterns, we see the things that we were taught or that were given to us, and we analyze them and determine that they weren't what we thought they were. And now this, rather than just stopping there, we can take these same deconstructive tools and apply them to our moral compass and determine what we feel is right and wrong. And here's another quote from Epictetus. I love his discourses, but it says, "Know first who you are." This is from Discourses, Book 3. "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." He continues saying, "You are a human being, that is a mortal animal capable of a rational use of things as they appear. And what is this rational use? A perfect conformity to nature." The encouragement that I have for you, listeners, this week, today, whenever you're finding this episode, is take a moment to reflect on the good things that the religious institution gave us. And I'm going to list a few because there are good things that I learned as a Mormon within the LDS faith. A lot of the teachings are good. Being kind to other people, taking care of our neighbors and our community when people are going through tough times, that is genuinely a good thing. Mourn with those that mourn, comfort those that stand in need and comfort. Those are good things. Just because we don't agree with everything anymore doesn't mean that there wasn't anything good there in the first place. There are many people within the LDS faith that are still great, excellent people, the kind that you want to have over to your house and hang out with. Many of the teachings of Jesus, I absolutely love. A lot of his teachings on kindness and being non-judgmental, these are excellent concepts that still deeply resonate with the person who I am today. So I can gratefully take these teachings from my youth and keep them with me on my journeys to other places. I've left the LDS faith, but there are many things that I hold with me still that I was taught when I was young. But I have the autonomy to go through each thing and decide what's right and wrong for me. And I encourage you, the listener, to think critically about this same idea. Determine what still resonates with you from the LDS faith and what doesn't. Leave the bad, but keep the good, and recognize where we got it from. I was taught to be kind in the LDS faith. I was taught to be kind by my family. And those teachings heavily influence me still today. In some conversations that I've had, and maybe you've had similar ones too, believing family and friends question us about our morality after we leave the faith. And it seems baffling to a believer that someone who doesn't believe in heaven and hell or Jesus and God can still have a moral compass. So this could turn into a conversation point where we could talk about what motivates our moral compass. As a non-believer, what are our motivations for being a good person or being kind to other people? Religious institutions don't have an ownership over right and wrong. It's just a different version of it. Thanks so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and I hope it was thoughtful and leads you to consider your own moral compass. Religious deconstruction it's so complex. There are parts that are so agonizing, but there are also parts that are so beautiful. And for me, rediscovering and redefining my own morality was one of those beautiful aspects. Thanks again for listening and letting me ramble on to you for a little bit. So, wherever you find yourselves out there, and this one's for you, JFX Multi, bathing a golden doodle, listening to the podcast while you're running a dog grooming business, I hope that you have an excellent day.